Welcome to my session, Dormant to Driven, Getting Students to Care. I can't tell you how excited I am to have you with me today. And let's be honest, these are crazy times, and a lot of us are in survival mode with all of the change and the craziness going on in the world. And learning is both more exciting and scary than ever. So today, with all the angles I could have taken, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of scenarios right now with education, with students that we could have touched on. And, whether you are in a hybrid school situation with your students, whether you have been homeschooling for years, there are so many different angles to take here. And I'm not going to be drilling down into any one scenario, but really, my goal today is to empower you with principles to engage your students. So I'm not going to take a prescriptive approach and address all of the thousands of different outcomes, but rather share universally applicable concepts to aid you as a teacher, educator, or parent. Okay? So, who am I? Well, my name is Neal Hooper, and I have a double master's degree in human resources and business administration from Utah State University. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies and higher education and have over 6 years of consulting experience in employee and student engagement. I'm the founder of Perceive to Achieve, LLC, and I specialize in helping individuals reclaim their emotional health and confidently move forward with a clear map for their future through engagement tools and through goal setting. But most important of all, I'm the father of 3 beautiful children and am married to my soulmate, Abria. They are both my why and how for everything I do. And I know I'm biased, but don't I have just the cutest family? Look at those little faces. They keep me busy for sure. But let's go ahead and dive into the content. So I wanted to start off by putting up a model that hopefully we can all rally behind, and that is that engagement in our students leads to better performance. I think this is pretty easy to agree with or to agree on, and what I want to focus on here is that engagement and that performance long term hopefully leads to growth, impact, and opportunity. That is why education is so important. And that is why learning is so important, because of the growth that takes place, the potential impact in the student's life, and also the potential impact they will have as they grow and develop. And then also that opportunity for these students. But there's something very important missing from this equation here that I want to talk to you about today. And that is what precedes engagement, and that is perception. All educators want to help their students perform and ultimately get that growth and impact. And sometimes we look at engagement, but we never look at what precedes it, which is the perception of the student's learning experience or topic and how that impacts their engagement, performance, and ultimately all those other results that we want. So let's look a little closer at perception. What is perception? Perception is your interpretation of reality. And that's important to keep in mind as we go through this presentation. We see everything through a lens, and it's so important that we understand what lens we are looking through and what lens our students are looking through as well. Because once we understand that, we will be able to proactively engage them. A quote that I love that I think sums it up beautifully is by Stephen Covey. He said, "We see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we are conditioned to see it." Once we understand all of the external factors that are shaping our perception of reality, and in this case, our learning experience, we will be able to move forward with such greater confidence. We have a perception for everything that happens to us. And it's important to understand that as we move forward. Now, I've done a lot of research, and I want to share some of that research with you for perception. Now, when I bring up perception in this training, I want you to think about it from a very specific angle. We're going to break down perception into two very crucial and important ingredients. We're going to talk about perceived value and perceived capability and how they apply in the settings. So the research I'm referencing when I bring in these two key ingredients is from some professors at Clemson University who explored goal setting in relation to two situational variables. Using a sample of 499 undergraduate students who listed grade goals for their classes, they explored how these two principles affected their efforts and motivation toward their goals. The professors were Michael Horvath, Haley Hurlman, and Lee McKee from Clemson University, if you want to look it up. At the end of the study, they said goal-setting motivation is the perception of value or relevance of a topic and our perception of how likely we'll be successful. So you can see how we've extracted that perceived value and perceived capability. Now, this is, in my opinion, the most important study about motivation and goal setting ever done, because from this study and from these two principles, we now have the key to staying engaged and helping our students be excited and own their learning experience. So, to be very clear, perceived value is what value the student sees in the topic, in the learning experience, in the course, and how it's benefiting them, right? So what's in it for them, basically? That is the perceived value. Now, perceived capability can be viewed as the student understanding or seeing how they have both the skill set and experience, but also the resources and the tools to be successful. Another way to look at this is if we reword these two ingredients as the why and the how. The why of your educational experience and the how of your educational experience both have to be very clear. Now, this is where it gets really fun. I want to show you something very incredible, and it is the framework through which we will continue the rest of this presentation. We've been working really hard for a few years to put together a model, and that is what I'm going to show to you now. The Perceive Matrix. Now, you will see every time a student sits down to engage in a learning experience, they are going to begin their journey in the Perceive Matrix. What you see here is we have plotted the why, which is that perceived value, on the vertical axis. We have also plotted the how, which is that perceived capability from the research, on the horizontal axis. It's really important to understand that there are 4 distinct boxes you can fall in, or a student can fall in regards to their engagement or drive levels, and we are going to go into those now. If a student does not perceive value, that why is not clear to them, and they also do not perceive capability, and that how has not been articulated, they are going to be dormant. A student here is not making progress. There's usually regular attendance issues, and the performance or grades diminishes. They are dormant. But when a student perceives both value, the why is clear, and capability, that how is clear, they are driven, and they're in this top right box. They have a learning goal and are actively pursuing it. They are excited about learning. They see value in the learning and feel capable of performing in the learning structure provided. They are driven. They are engaged. This is where we want our students. And there are students there. We know probably examples of both of these boxes, dormant and driven. But where do students spend a large majority of time? We would love our students to be in that driven box all the time. And we hope they don't spend time in that dormant box, although that is sometimes inevitable. But unfortunately, the reality is that they spend a lot of time in two other boxes that we will discuss now. If there's a clear curriculum or learning goal, and the student does understand the why or perceived value in the topic or subject, but they're not clear on the how or perceived capability, that's when they become discouraged. The student wants to learn and may have a great deal of interest in the topic, but if the how, that perceived capability, is not clear, or they don't believe they have the skill set, experience, or resources to be successful, they don't perceive capability and they are discouraged. Another word to describe this box, especially in severe cases, is depression. And the actual definition of depression is a mental condition characterized by feelings of severe despondency or a loss of hope. So we obviously don't want our students to be in the discouraged box, but that is often where they end up. Their heart's in the right place, they perceive the value, the why is there for them, but they feel discouraged and overwhelmed in some cases. So that is the discouraged box. Now, let's say that the how or perceived capability is not the issue. Sometimes students perceive a great deal of capability and are confident even in their skills and resources to be successful, but they don't understand the why or perceived value behind the learning experience. When this happens, the students are disengaged. This usually happens when a learning project, duties, or goals are imposed on students and the why is not clearly articulated or cascaded down to them. And I'll tell you, based on my experience in corporate America, this happens a lot in larger organizations. Imposed goals or projects without clearly articulated value propositions or compelling whys often result in disengagement, especially if the individuals are overloaded and they're making decisions about where to prioritize their time. Students who fall in this box have lots of promise and potential, but they don't put forth the effort. Sound familiar? If a student spends a lot of time here, the disengagement, if we're not careful, can become rebellion. And this becomes even harder to manage at that point because they've really dug their heels in and think it's stupid or a waste of time what you're trying to do for them. So isn't this awesome? I obviously am biased, as I mentioned earlier, but we're just getting started. And let's make sure we understand how to identify where a student falls in the perceived matrix. We don't want our students or children to be dormant, discouraged, or disengaged, but they often are. Now, let's look at the perceived matrix from a different angle, okay? I got a pop quiz for you. So I'm going to show you a clip of a student, and then I am going to ask you which box these students might fall in. And I have a little aid here on the right so you can remember which the boxes, what the boxes are. And we're going to start with our first one. Is this expired?
I think I'm going to get sick. I just had this mac and cheese in a cup, just the regular. And I looked at the bottom and there's actually an expiration date and it says the 24th of February, 2020.
Aww. If it didn't taste bad, maybe it's probably fine. I don't know. Okay, hang on. Jump into chat and tell Cameron what to do before she dies of food poisoning.
I forgot that was on mute. I was telling my mom, but you guys can do that too.
Oh no, she's gonna be fine.
Okay, so based on that clip and referencing these bullets here on the right, which box do you think this poor student, who hopefully does not have food poisoning, falls into? Driven, both the why and the how are in place. Discouraged, the why is there but is unclear on the how. And disengaged, unclear on the why, but maybe the how is in place. Or dormant. Okay, no why or how. What do you think? It appears that the how may not be the issue. The laptop's there, they're connected, they're going. Doesn't seem to be any issue there or obstacle there. But the why, this student appeared a little disengaged. Okay, they were not very interested in the lecture. The why is not really there. The student is not compelled to be paying attention. They're not wanting to engage. They know they could, right? And she knows how to work Zoom. She had no problem there. So it wasn't the how, it was the why. Now let's look at our next example. I did cheat.
You had 2 tests?
I did that!
You got a 53 and a 60. You can cheat. It's online.
I did cheat!
And you still got a 53 and a 60?
Okay, so think about this one. Where does this student fall? They were obviously wanting a good grade, whether that was by coercion or otherwise. It was clear that they wanted to be doing well, but they weren't. And they appeared to be trying, but their efforts were not working, even when they had everything spelled out for them. So if you said discouraged, you were right. The why is there, and they want to be doing well, but their efforts are not working. They don't feel capable, or the process is not there. So they are discouraged. Okay, let's look at one more. Raccoon Kid. Roll the clip.
Until the quarter of the semester's over. Oh, maybe we'll wake him up. Carlos! Carlos, are you there? Carlos! Class is over, my friend. You need to go ahead and head to your second period. Your camera is on.
Is? Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay, so that one obviously is a little cheeky, but we're just going to put him in the dormant box because he was sleeping. I did not know you could have a domesticated raccoon as a pet, but hey, might want to put that on the Christmas list. So, as we went through all those examples, and hopefully your wheels are turning a little better, you might be able to understand how to identify the different students or kids and where they fall in the perceived matrix. And it's important because once we understand where they are, we know exactly how to help them immediately. So if a student is disengaged and the why is not clear for them, the only way to get them in that driven box is to boost the perceived value or the why. So what does that look like? I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers in an educational setting, but here are just a few thoughts of how you might boost the perceived value or the why for a student. Okay, you are going to want to articulate value. You're going to want to make sure it's crystal clear what's in it for the student. Why should they care about this subject or assignment? Why is it important to understand this concept? As you answer those questions and make it real to them, then they are going to increase their perceived value. The second one is related, but it's unique enough that I wanted to cover it as a separate bullet. You have to do relatable activities. Enabling students to connect activities to their life experiences is a small change that can make a big difference. So think through your course activities or the learning experience you're providing and ask yourself, am I providing opportunities for my students to compare topics to their past accomplishments or future goals? By making learning personal and applicable, you can enhance the social interaction in your virtual class, which might be one outcome, but more importantly, you're going to help them boost their perceived value and make it relatable. And the last point is student-led learning. As you turn the reins over to the student and provide autonomy for them, this is very powerful for a number of reasons, but how it relates here with the perceived value or the why is with that autonomy, they're going to be able to tailor the experience and the approach to a way that helps them succeed, or a way that is value added for them. And that is the power of student-led learning. So again, those are just a few examples off the top to get your wheels turning, but there is very, very important stuff here when it comes to the why and boosting that perceived value. So it's not always the why that's the problem, though. And as we discussed earlier, being discouraged can also be an issue. If a student is discouraged, they obviously need the how. They need that perceived capability. And what are some examples of things we can do to boost the how? You can make sure that you are giving ample detail in the assignments. If it's not clear exactly what you're asking from your students, then there is a lot of room there for overwhelm, for frustration, and for a diminished how or perceived capability. We have to make sure we're giving lots of detailed instructions. We also need to make sure that we're tailoring the instruction to each individual student. And I know that can be overwhelming, but if you are presenting a lecture orally and you have a lot of visual learners in your class, then it is going to be very hard for them to feel like winning is possible, because as the information comes, they will get overwhelmed because they're not retaining it, and that will lead to diminished perceived capability as well. Collaboration is a huge part of the perceived capability as well. As humans, we have an innate desire and tendency to socialize. However, with remote learning, students don't get the social stimulation they would have gotten from an in-person learning environment. And these days, that is a huge ding to the confidence and the perceived capability for these students. And it's important to provide opportunities for mentoring, for coaching, for tutoring, and especially in a one-on-one setting to ensure that they can be successful and just feel that support system in place. That will help boost their drive levels exponentially. So there you have it. Hopefully you can see the power of this model in the perceived matrix. Once we understand where our students are, either individually or collectively as a whole class, we know exactly where we need to focus our efforts to boost that drive and engagement, which will then enhance performance and ultimately the outcomes, growth, and opportunity that we so desperately want for our students and kids. So let's go back to this model. Here is the crazy thing, okay? We know there's engagement and performance involved here with this learning journey. And we frequently measure performance, grades, attendance. These things are all captured very aggressively. And so we have a pretty good idea there. Engagement, maybe in an informal setting or an informal way, can be assessed, right? Obviously, you can start to see signs when students or kids are not engaged, but there's not a lot of engagement going on in terms of measurement from an educator's perspective. But here's one thing I can say with confidence. The perception is never measured, probably because people don't understand how to measure it. So how do we measure the perception? Well, let's talk about that now. That is the question. How do we proactively engage our students? Well, I have two tools to show you. The first tool I have is a drive assessment, and this is a powerful and very easy way for you to, in a quantifiable way, evaluate where your students are in terms of their perceived value and perceived capability in their learning experience. So first off, here is a list of questions that you can ask in a formal assessment or survey, or in an informal conversational style meeting. And if you want to get really quantifiable here to measure the results, you would ask them to rate each question on a scale of 1 to 5, how accurate the statement is to them. These are ways we can dive deeper and understand where their perceived value is. And we do the same thing for perceived capability. On a scale of 1 to 5, how accurate are the following statements? And once you go through these questions, and again, if you do it in a formal survey and you quantify the answers on a scale of 1 to 5, and once you get a total for each one, you can see where the deficiency is, right? Are they discouraged? Right? Is the perceived value the issue? Is the perceived capability the issue? Where do I need to focus my efforts as an educator or parent? Do I need to help them perceive more value? Do I need to help them with the why? Or is it the how? Is it that perceived capability? Are they overwhelmed and just need, quick wins or a more detailed instruction on how to complete the assignments? This is where it gets very, very valuable for you to do that. And again, this can be a formal assessment or it can be an informal one-on-one discussion. It can also just be through observation. You don't even have to bring them into the equation, but you can also just observe your students and take notes, right? Like we did with the videos. Just start taking notes of where your students are at, and you can get an idea that way as well. The second tool that I would like to share with you are smarter goals. And this is particularly powerful in student-led learning environments, or if you are unschooling your children, again, if you want to empower them and help them really manage their education and their learning, this is a very valuable tool. So everyone understands what a SMART goal is. This is the new way to set goals. SMART goals are insufficient. How many SMART goals have you set and never followed through with? Well, the same stats are true of your students, and probably more so. The thing here is a SMART goal is the what, but the why and how, perceived value and perceived capability, are missing from most SMART goals. For student-led learning, goals are absolutely crucial. You have to have some kind of goal or target in order to engage your students and keep them excited. So what are SMARTer goals? Well, we know the acronym for a SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And that's great, but that's all the what. E stands for execution plan. Okay, this is the how, obviously. So you're going to come up with immediate next steps, 3 things that they can do immediately after getting up that will help them get momentum. You're going to identify obstacles and solutions. And so, here's some examples of things. This is for a health goal that I did. You're going to brainstorm a list of healthy snacks. You can set your workout clothes out by your bedside and define ground rules for sugar consumption, which zaps your energy. And so you can see these are immediate next steps. And then those obstacles and solutions. Okay, so here's some examples there, again, for the health goal example. Then you're going to identify habits for success and projects for success. There, you could come up with any number of habits that your student or your child could be focusing on to make sure they're successful, and any projects that they need. And a project can be defined as a deliverable, right? So again, you'll see here in this example, signing up for a gym membership as a start and end, right? You can measure that. Creating a workout routine, that's like a deliverable. So those are some ideas of projects. Once you get all of that outlined, the last step for your execution plan is to get an accountability partner. This is a very powerful way for a student to have some accountability, but also to have someone to set goals with and to encourage each other with. Then you're going to get clear on the reason why. That's what the R stands for. So why is this goal important to you? Why is this learning experience or why is this topic important to you? What will happen if you achieve this goal? What will happen if you don't? You want to dig deep and really get clear and come up with that powerful reason why behind the goal and behind the learning experience. Because once you get clear about that and how it will help them learn, grow, and have opportunities in their future, it will become much more powerful. And finally, how will this help you become the person you want to be? Research shows that when you tie in your goals to your identity, especially your future identity, it's a very powerful way to boost your perceived value. These are 2 incredibly powerful tools that you can use to help your students engage and actually want to be there in the learning environment. And I know there's so many nuance, there's a lot of circumstances to consider and a lot of things outside of your control, frankly. But as you understand this framework and you use these tools to understand where your students, where your children are, you can then proactively engage. And that is my goal, is to empower you to know how to help your students find fulfillment and joy and excitement in their learning again. You can download these free tools at perceivetoachieve.com, and I've made them available for everyone on this session. So I want you to head over there. It'll be front and center on the website. So I hope you can go check it out, and I'd love to hear your feedback on those tools. Okay, so let's come back to where we started. Hopefully you can see now the power of perception, the power of assessing that perception and drive, and how that impacts the engagement performance and ultimately the growth, impact, and opportunity for these students. If you proactively boost the perception and manage the perception of value and capability, that why and how, you will get the engagement and the performance and ultimately that growth, impact, and opportunity. That is my message today. Boost the perception, manage that perception, and you will make the impact on the students and your children that you want. I wanted to end with this quote by Nelson Mandela. Children are our greatest treasure. They are our future. The reason we are so passionate about learning, the reason we are here at this conference listening to these different sessions, is because we care about the future, because we care about the development, the growth, and the opportunities of tomorrow's generation. And I think that is something we can all rally behind. And I hope that through our proactive efforts to engage that drive in our students and in our children, we'll be able to help them own their learning experience and really internalize what they need in order to become what they want to be. Thank you so much for giving me your time today, and I hope that we can connect. I'd love your feedback. I'd love to hear about what you're doing that's effective to engage your students. Please, let's continue the conversation. You can follow me on LinkedIn, shoot me an email, go visit the website. I would love to chat and connect with you. So here's to engaging our students and making the future a little brighter. Cheers.